You moved to LA, what was it? It was after everything broke up.
It was
at
after
Abnac.
everything here with Abnac, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, did you have a lead on a band? Were you?
No, me and Rambo just basically, and well, Mike Raven with the Five Americans, and Jim Grant, the bass player of the Five Americans. The four of us went out there, and of course Jim and Mike didn't. It didn't last too long for them. They came back here and put a band together called Choctaw with Daryl Norris playing drums, and Rambo and I stayed out there. And of course, Rambo got hooked up with oh gosh, I can't remember that darn producer's name now. It was in with Jerry Jeff Walker. And I got hooked up with, that's when I met Ty Grimes out there when he was playing with Rick Nelson. And I got hooked up with Ty, and he kind of opened up some doors for me with people like Jerry Wexler. And
So you were out there looking mainly to do session work?
I went out there to do session work.
Yeah.
And of course, I knew some people from after, for touring like 8 years with the Dick Clark Caravan of Stars.
Right.
And of course, I'd already knew Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart and all that stuff because I'd toured with those guys. And of course, they're basically the ones that did all the monkey stuff. And of course, they all, the monkeys all took the credit for it. But I got hooked up with Don Kirshner. Had Don Kirshner's rock concert.
Yeah.
And we put a band together called Black Orpheus. We were kind of an occult type band back there. It was kind of a way back before you ever heard of like Kansas or Dixie Greggs. It was that type of band. Yeah, Orpheus probably would have stayed together, but Kenny came home with the guitar player that was in the band. Of course, him and me and the drummer, all three of us from Dallas. And Kenny came home. We were on our second LP, and Kenny came home to visit his folks. And he was bad weather, was raining and all that stuff. And Kenny got killed in a car wreck. So that pretty much kind of wasted us all. So we just kind of, I know it put me over the edge with a lot of other things that have been going on. And anyway, Orpheus kind of broke up. We never even finished the second album. And I left L.A. and just came back to Dallas and kind of hung it up for 8 years.
So you left L.A. in about 77?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so got out of music for?
Totally for 8 years.
Yeah.
I didn't play, I didn't do anything. I was basically, I was, like a lot of us do. You get out there with sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you're into everything.
Yeah.
And God, I never was a big guy anyway. I went out there, I think it was 150 pounds, but when I came home, I weighed 119 pounds.
Wow.
And so, anyway, I didn't really want to play anymore. And then my old buddy John Nitzinger kept after me to come back playing again because I'd known Nitz for years. And
tell the tape recorder about John Nitzinger.
Oh, you don't want me to tell the story about Nitzinger?
No, just we call this context. Tell us about who you.
Oh man,
I
can tell you stories about him and Bugs and Rocky Athens. I could tell you a lot of stuff and scare you.
Bugs.
Henderson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, especially Bugs' Voodoo Club. Shoot. Yeah, but Nitz is the one that finally taught me, well, he always called me Pawpaw because I always had grandkids at an early age where everybody else had kids, but they didn't have any grandkids, And to this very day, Nitz still calls me Pawpaw. But yeah, John finally, he taught me into playing again back in '87. In '89, John got this idea. This is back when Satriani and Bice, the instrumental guitar stuff, started hitting the scene.
Yeah.
John got this idea about taking some of our songs that we had been doing forever and ever and ever, doing them over as instrumental, and bringing in a horn section and B3 and all that kind of stuff. And we had a project called the Texas Music Machine. And we had people we brought in all kinds of hot rod guitar players. We brought in Billy Gibbons, of course, Rocky Athens, Pat Hornsby, that I believe he's in a roundabout way is kin to Bruce Hornsby.
Yeah.
Pat, and then Stevie, Jimmy, the Vaughn brothers, and of course Rocky Athens and Bugs. And I was trying to remember who else was on there. I believe that's all. No. We tried to get Eric Johnson, but Eric couldn't do it. And of course Nitzinger. And we put out a couple CDs called the Texas Music Machine.
That would have been the late '80s.
We started '89. We got one track on Stevie right before he got killed. We got that. We got it called Beaumar's Disease. He's on that. And then the album was actually finished in late '90, but it wasn't released until I want to say like '97.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Matter of fact, it's out on the internet right now.
Did you ever play the Dallas Cellar?
Oh yeah, played the Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston. Played the old original one when it was downstairs before it burnt. Yep, I've been to all of them. There was another club I used to frequent a lot too over in Fort Worth. I think it was called the Tropicana. Played there a lot. It was back in our crazy days. We had a lot of fun.
But it seemed like, I mean, in the early days, the main band you were in for some time was the Dimensions.
Well, yeah, that's because that was the first band that I had put. I put that band together when I was 13 years old.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
13, and we had our first record out, and I was playing guitar mostly at that time. Had our first record out when we were 14, and it was,
Where did you record that first record?
that first record was cut at Cellars,
Uh-huh.
and the old original Cellars.
Yeah. Where was the old original Cellars located?
Now off of Harwood, I want to say, downtown Dallas, if I remember correctly.
Downtown?
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah, I'm almost positive, yeah. And we cut that down there, and Jim Lowe that did Cat's Caravan on WRR, he was our manager. And we'd go down and play live on Cat's Caravan on radio on Friday nights down there at the Fair Park. And well, Jim, he was a friend of my dad's. That's how we got hooked up with him. And he took our band under his wing and everything. And of course, he put our records out. And it was in a 5-state regional area, and it did pretty good, for back in the day. I think on K-Box and Cliff, it got up to like number 6 on both stations.
What was the A side?
The A side was Firewater. It was an instrumental. The B side was Slippery When Wet. And I did a dadgum Google on that stuff the other day. My God, those songs are all over out on things, what they call surfer music. I can't believe how many records that I pull up out of California and over in Europe. Those songs are still on to this very day.
Really?
I'm sitting there going, where's my money?
Yeah. Who the personnel in Dimensions?
The original band was Donnie, the drummer I was telling you about.
Uh-huh.
Donnie, when he wasn't
LaGrone?
LaGrone, yeah. At the time, well, he was one of these multi-talented musicians. At the time, he was fronting the band and playing piano. Jimmy Herbert was on guitar. Gary Walter was on guitar, and actually we had this is ridiculous. Before bass players were around, we had 4 guitar players, no bass player. Okay,
You didn't play bass.
I didn't play bass then.
You were playing guitar.
Yeah, I was. I still play guitar half the time, but I was the lead guitar player in that band.
Ah.
And we had 4 guitar players: Bill Mattel, Jimmy Herbert, Gary Walters, and myself. And nobody wanted to go get a bass. So I told my dad, I said, "Look, I need a bass player, and I can't find nobody to play bass." And I said, "Would you buy me a bass?" So what they do instead of take me down to McCard Music, which I was hoping they'd do, took me to Sears and let me get a mail order black Sears bass, which was a cool bass. It was built by Dano Electro.
Yeah.
And I played that thing for about 2 years through an old 410 Fender Bassman.
Yeah.
And
Is that one you wish you had back?
oh yeah, yeah. I wish they had both of them back. But I ended up, of course, what was funny, because after I started playing bass, Jimmy said, "Hey, I want to play bass." I said, "What do you want to do? You play bass sometime, you play guitar, vice versa?" He said, "Yeah, why don't we do that?" So we'd already thinned the band down, got rid of 1 guitar player. We had 2 guitar players and a bass player then. And so we ended, it was back in the day, it was us, a band called the Continentals, and the Nightcaps. And it was us, those 3 bands. We were always in hot competition with each other all over the place. And it was just really a good, fun time. I had that band, from the 7th grade through high school, all the way through high school.